So today I'm with Rick Hughes, Director at Estimating Online, based in Perth. Rick brings over 17 years of experience in the building and construction industry with deep expertise in estimating and project scheduling across both residential and commercial sectors. He began his career in 2004 with one of Australia's leading home builders, where he developed strong foundations in construction management and specialising in estimating and scheduling. In 2012, Rick founded Blulevel Estimating Online, and other small businesses providing comprehensive bills of quantity services to builders. Since 2017, Rick has focused on delivering full-scope building estimates for clients across Australia. Under his leadership, Blulevel Estimating and Estimating Online has supported several tenders nationwide and contributed to the estimation of more than $7.02 billion in construction costs over the past 9 years. So welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Phil. It's a
So,
bit of a long introduction there.
yeah, always important. So let's start with, how did you get into business for yourself in the first place?
Well, the reason why I got into business, to be brutally honest, was, I saw a gap in the market where I felt like builders were not quoting projects properly. And I knew that I could offer a service to allow builders to see quantities, to see construction rates, so they potentially weren't undercosting their projects, which, as we all know, if you undercost a project, you lose money. And, that, doesn't really work out well for businesses when you start losing money. You end up cutting corners. So I explored into that option to basically try to provide that service.
Yeah, fantastic. And so how were you able to draw on the experience that you already had in estimating that really made this a good potential outcome for business owners?
I think, when I was employed, unfortunately, I moved around a lot as a staff member, but that was also a positive thing as well, because it allowed me to gain a huge amount of experiences in other building companies. And just from learning from different leaders in the industry and different staff members and contractors and suppliers that I've worked with gives me the confidence to be able to just continue going forward.
Fantastic. And what was one of the earliest wins that told you that you were really onto something good?
I think my first win was probably the most important win that sort of made me believe that this could happen. And that was, I approached a really large brick manufacturer company, and I just ran with what I felt was right. I pitched an idea to them and said, hey guys, why don't you, provide a bit of a different direction and help smaller builders out and, for example, offer the brick quantities. And I couldn't believe it, to be honest. Like I got invited into their office. I was, a young skinny lad who was full of ego, and they took it on board. They embraced it. They gave me my first opportunity, and I've had plenty of wins across my journey, but, I still remember that one very clearly. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, well done. And so, I guess in the converse of that, thinking about one of the early mistakes that you made that you wouldn't repeat.
Too many mistakes, Phil. Look, I don't think there is such a thing as a mistake in business, to be honest. I feel like whatever actions you put out, there's always going to be some sort of positive or negative spin to whatever you do. It's learning from situations. So I wouldn't say that I've made huge mistakes. I've some silly mistakes that I've made is I've bought an office. I leased an office for 5 years. Another mistake was, I had a wrong office set up with, an open plan. There's lots of small little things that I've made mistakes from, but I've also learnt from that as well. But in relation to, business to business mistakes, sometimes speaking my mind and speaking my truth has got me into trouble, but they're also my values of what I believe as well. So, one of the core values as an estimator is you're here to, sort of share the outcome that you potentially don't want to hear. And there's some of the things that have got me in trouble.
Yeah, fair enough. So just going back to the office mistake that you mentioned, what would you do differently there?
So the problem that I had with the office mistakes was I was trying to look after my staff and try to do the right thing for my staff. Placing an office in the right location, potentially, giving a little bit too much away. And as I said as well, that I don't think it was a mistake. I learnt from those processes. But if I had my time again, I would probably be a little bit more selective and a little bit more patient with my choice of office and where I based myself. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so tell us about a tough patch on the journey, and then how did you actually deal with that tough patch at the time?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm pretty sure this is a pretty popular response, is the period from 2019 to 2023. Obviously, what I'm sharing here is that COVID period. I remember the exact location where I was and the exact time. I was with my dogs walking around the park. I think it was about 10 o'clock in the afternoon. Sorry, 10 o'clock in the morning. And I legitimately just didn't know what to do. And, it felt like my back was pushed right up against the wall and I was forced into a position to make a decision. And I was, maybe 4 or 5 years into business, and that's still quite a duration. But I think I was, so what would that be? I would have been 36, 35 then. And,
Hmm.
just having to deal with it and, get cracking and move forward. I think everyone's got a story through that time period.
Yeah.
And you know, you really find out what you're made of when your back's against the wall.
Yeah. And Rick, so with that realization that, the back's up against the wall, what was one of the key things that you did to pivot to cope with, I guess, that new direction that we were all faced with?
Never back down.
Okay. So,
I was very lucky to have a partner who supported me at home and also in the office as well. And, I remember very clearly, I'd put my kids down to bed at 8 o'clock. I'd have a Red Bull. I'd jump in the car, go to the office, and I would do whatever it takes to make this company work.
hmm
And I guess, providing any advice is these are the things you got to do. As business owners, we're not rewarded. We're not seen doing those things. But yeah,
yeah. So I guess, are you referring then to all the lockdown periods that a lot of business owners went through at the time?
we didn't have troubles with lockdown periods. So my business is purely an online business, but jumping back in the seat whenever it was required at whatever time it was
Hmm.
was basically what needed to happen. So, for example, we changed our pricing structure. We changed our work structure that was
Hmm.
for our customers, and basically just did whatever it took. And if that meant that I had to, go back into the office at 11 o'clock at night through to 1 o'clock in the morning, that was basically some of the things that just had to be done. And I think the no excuse sort of policy attitude, kicked in during that time period. If you want something, you will do whatever it takes.
Yeah. So sort of keeping that in context then, what were some of the things that you stopped doing that then made a difference?
Don't know. What did I stop doing? I don't think I stopped doing anything. I think I doubled down, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what I stopped doing. I stopped exercising. I stopped looking after myself, to be honest.
Mhm.
I love my golf, right? I love my sport. I stopped playing golf. I stopped, putting myself first. My health did suffer a little bit, I suppose. I gained weight, during that time period, but I think everyone gained weight during that time period as well. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. The business was definitely number one priority because there was no way I was going back to employment life.
Okay. So I guess, thinking about, resilience, how did you call on your resilience, and in what ways did that help keep you going?
Well, think when you look back to when you're raised a certain way. I look back at my childhood. I look back how I was raised by my mum and, being around my stepdad, which were really tough times. And, to be able to have a goal in mind and what you want to do is part of me. So look, there's
Mm,
no silver answer to your question or gold lined answer to your question. Everyone's approach is different. Everyone's attack is different, but those core values of who you believe in is really important.
yeah. So, it all comes back to your own skills and beliefs and values that become important there. Okay.
You just got to be you. Um,
Yes.
when times get tough or you're winning. In my group at the moment with my builders who I work with, it doesn't matter if you're winning or losing, your mentality stays the same. So
Yeah. So, You've mentioned team a number of times, Rick. In terms of managing the team, tell us about, the meeting rhythms. Did you have daily huddles, weekly ops meetings, monthly reviews? Tell us a bit about the way that you conducted those rhythms.
If anyone knows me personally or anyone who's worked with me, I definitely have a different approach to business. I don't like, the straight down the line sort of business structure approach. So, I tried to encourage, monthly catch ups with the team. I remember at some point in business, I allocated, $300 for entertainment, to be able to, take the guys out for lunch and, sit around a table
Hmm.
and just have a conversation about anything but work. We went through the business structure of, round the table meetings. We went around and asked each staff member to conduct the meeting and hold the meeting. We've also
Hmm.
asked, multiple different staff members, no matter what your level of experience is, to take notes. I would sit in the meetings and take notes. I would hold the meetings. I would sit back and just be another ear in the meeting, no matter what my
Mm.
position was. So, we've been through that structure. We've also gone down the path of a digital space as well, where we have a group chat through Microsoft Teams, and we share information, and that's sort of instant live sort of meeting, sort of approach. But I don't think there is the perfect way to be able to deliver meetings and all that sort of stuff and interactions.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that, you were allowed the team members to take control and run the meetings on a periodical or a systematic basis.
Yep.
What were the benefits that you saw actually come out the back end of that?
Straight away, you find out who's a leader. You find out who wants to take charge, and you find out who wants to sit in the back seat. So,
Mm.
as a business owner, we all want people to potentially take over our business and run the business. And,
Mm.
what I saw in those meetings was a certain group of people who just sat back. And that was, part of my decision about, where do I take this business? Who's going to be on my side, when times get tough,
Mm.
and who's going to take responsibility. So, it's such a small task of, conducting a meeting and saying, all right, John, it's your turn to have a conversation. All right, John, you finished now. Do you have any more feedback? Those sorts of meeting structure leadership is sometimes what builds an employee into, the next sort of level. So that's
Yeah.
exactly why I did it. And, to be honest, I've had maybe about 9 staff through my system, and no one's really nailed it and really taken control. Everyone sort of has like a soft backseat approach. And to be honest, that's why I'm still sitting in the seat, because there's no one who's taken charge and really wants it. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So, in terms of what I call the rules of the game, a la culture,
Yeah. Oh
what
yeah.
are some of the what are some of the behaviors that you've rewarded, and what are the ones that you never really walk past? Is that now you've stuck the toe over the line? Time for us to have a discussion.
Yeah. Good question. I think I've experienced both sides of the coin over the last, 24 to 36 months. And then through my journey of, employing staff, I've seen different sorts of characters. I don't know the exact right answer here. I've had a staff member who's really smart, but he's an introvert. No people skills, no, communication skills, but also is very intelligent and is very, smart in understanding the numbers inside my business and inside the game that we do. And then I've had an employee on the opposite end of the direction. I've had an extrovert. So an extrovert being, very outgoing, social, loves to talk, doesn't mind a beer at the pub, but sort of lacked a few skills in, sort of the qualities of doing the role. And, when it comes to rewarding my staff, I believe culture is a very big factor in a business because it makes or breaks. And I think I have a very good example of, myself. I would class myself as introvert, extrovert, split personalities who I could quite easily go into my shell and, curl up in a ball and have a cry, and not talk to anyone, but I could also flip the coin and, be completely opposite. And to be honest, it was hard to run a business where I had different personalities at different ends of the scale. For example, like we'd go out for lunches or we'd go to a sporting event or, we'd jump on a plane and, go to an event on the other side of Australia. But, we sort of all knew what we needed to do. Being a small business, I think, is a little bit different. If we were a company of, let's say, 15, 20, 30 people, it would be different. If I had, two introverts who had no communication skills, but very analytical versus, 12 extroverts who just love to get up and chat and communicate and talk and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah. So, in your experience, then, Rick, how important is it to get a balance of the different introvert, extrovert, in the words that I like to use, the four disc styles being discipline,
yeah,
influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. How important is it getting that right balance?
depends what you want to achieve, Phil. I want to achieve good results for my customers, but
Hmm.
I'm in a digital space. So we can have a lot of communication just over email with our customers and don't necessarily have to have a, sort of friendly going approach because that's our business nature. I think that if you're running a company that is purely an online business, you can get away with introvert extroverts working together. But if you were to run a different sort of company that might be, for example, a marketing company, there's no way in hell you're going to have someone who a communication style worker. So you need to know your business of what you need and what works for your business before you look at those personalities, I suppose.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So let's just move on to growth now. In terms of growth, where do you see the growth coming from for your business?
Referrals is growth, building
Hmm.
relationships with existing customers who then feel comfortable sharing their experiences is where the real growth is.
Yes.
We can all have great marketing campaigns. We can all, have the best product. But if you don't have, a good system behind you of repeat customers who, aren't afraid to educate other members inside their circle, I don't think you're going to be able to get real growth. I think we're in a very hyper focused world at the moment where, if something's really good, they will just jump onto it and they'll just buy it regardless of whatever it is.
Hmm.
For example, obviously the conversation about AI is very hyper focused at the moment. So, as soon as I post something about AI, it just gets instant attraction because that's what people want.
Mm.
But, to be honest, AI is probably going to be exactly where it needs to be in some years' time. But, the best growth I think is through word of mouth and, building
Yeah.
relationships inside your community.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. And in terms of the products and the services that you offer, Rick, where do you see growth actually coming from or expanding? Have you identified any new markets for your online estimating
There's
products and services?
There are plenty of new markets. We've got so many rabbit holes that we could dive down with our product. So our product is a digital product where, you can register anywhere in the world. You can populate data inside my platform anywhere in the world. But
Hmm.
the business is only as good as the audience who want to listen. So put in front of the right people, it will grow anywhere. But also
So
that's one of the biggest challenges as well.
yeah, and if you think about your ideal target market, how would you describe them as an avatar?
Well, my game is numbers, right? The data that we produce equals a construction cost, and my target market is, the builder or customer who wants to have a real understanding of the costings for their project.
Mm,
If you're flexible and you're not so concerned with cost outcomes, then there's other options out there in the industry.
hmm.
But if you are very number driven and very focus driven on outcomes with specific levels inside of a construction build estimation, then that's our perfect target market. I think, sort of the mid range bracket to the upper end bracket of business owners is where we're sort of focusing. The new generation of builders coming through think that AI and estimating is going to solve their problems. We haven't dived down that path fully just yet. We need to see some more results, but yeah, we're very clear on who our target market is. Yeah.
Yeah. Understanding your numbers in business, Rick. I'm really keen to get your take on the importance of understanding your numbers. Why is it so important?
I think that, you can dive into the numbers in your business. And I did it last night. You could pull out your credit card statement for the last 3 months. You could pull out, your sales history. You can track your data, but it also can create a bit of confusion in your business. Like, I don't know very many businesses that are, 200, 300% positive cash flow and don't worry about those things. But you know, I do believe there's a certain element of you can't control everything, but you also
Hmm.
got to be wary of what you spend. One of the most important things that I do in my business is, track my sales on a weekly basis. Making sure that I'm consistently hitting a number is really important to me. Do I track every expense that goes out? I used to, but not anymore. But over a period of time, I've tried to let go of trying to control some of the smaller things like
Mm.
maybe a $5 purchase or a $12 purchase or anything under $200. But you also need to know your position in your business as well. So I don't know if I entirely answered that question for you correctly, but it's a double-edged sword, I believe.
Absolutely. And look, understanding your numbers is just one of those. It's not only the financial numbers, it's also your operational numbers what are the things, the key things that actually drive your business. And when you understand those numbers, and Rick, you've indicated that, it's something that you've tracked. How has that helped make you better or helped you make better decisions in the path and the track that you're going down in terms of, growth and development of the business?
I do. I have a good answer for you, but I'm trying to keep it PG rated. Let me just try to think of a different way to describe this. There's a line in a movie, I can't remember the movie, whatever it is, and it talks about being in a position to not give a F, right?
Hmm.
You got to be able to have the sales behind you before you can make good decisions. You got to be able to understand that if you don't potentially have your numbers aligned in the back end, you can't take risks in your business. Having a conversation actually yesterday with one of my builders, and he was reflecting on the past 8 months. And, he was trying to take risks in his business when he didn't have the numbers behind him. And
Mm.
he found that he was just making mistakes after mistakes after mistakes and just wasn't winning. So he scaled back and, played to his strengths, put money in the bank or calculated his numbers to a position where he felt safe in his business. And then as he started to get some more momentum, he started to take some more risks. So putting yourself into a position where you're comfortable is important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one of the things that I notice is that a lot of people will focus on how much money they've got on in the bank, and then that will drive their motivation level. Generally in a negative way. And what's important to understand here is that the money in the bank is only the result of something else, some other actions. And rather than focus on the money result, focus on the actions that actually drive and build the money, which becomes the important thing
I
here.
think it's
So,
also important. It doesn't matter how much money you got in the bank, still be the same person as well.
oh, absolutely.
So
Yes.
just
Yeah.
because you've got $100,000, $400,000 in the bank doesn't mean you can be a bit of an ass. Be the same person as you were when you had $5,000 in the bank.
Yeah. And again, that's another important aspect. So we all in business, we come and get up against situations where, we've got an opportunity to take on a job. Sometimes we say yes, sometimes we say no. What's the driver or what's the rule that you use to say no to a job?
It's so simple. And I wish I knew this a long time ago and maybe I'd have a bit more hair if I implemented this in my younger days. But the strange part about it was is I've always lived by this rule. It's work with people who want to work with you.
Yes.
Throughout my whole career, when I was employed and when I was trying to do contracting and business and all that sort of stuff, I knew people didn't want to work with me, but I just tried to make it work. Learning to accept and move on is important. I'm still struggling with that sort of focus now, but learning who wants to work with you.
Yes. Yeah. No, great advice, Rick. So if you could rewrite or rewind the last 3 years, what would you do differently?
I don't really know the exact answer to that one.
Or
I felt
maybe what would you do sooner?
I don't know. Look, I don't want to. Yeah, look, I'm trying to, rewind back a little bit to the past 3 years and sort of understand where I've gone and what I've done and all that sort of stuff. But I think would have managed my staff a little bit better. Maybe
Hmm.
that's definitely one. I
In,
probably
in what way?
maybe because it's a little bit fresh in my mind at the moment. I probably would have made some decisions on moving staff on a lot quicker
Hmm.
instead of trying to, hold their hand in educating and, sort of learning. But I sort of also had a mentality in businesses is like I created business to train people, not to just financially benefit my back pocket. I created my business to provide opportunities for staff to learn. And,
Hmm.
there were situations that presented itself in the past 3 years where I should have, signed off and moved on a lot quicker. But I was persistent in trying to continue to train, educate, and, put my own money at risk, I suppose. So I should have made
Mm.
some decisions a lot quicker and decided to move on and move forward. But, do I regret it? No, I don't. You know, I love the journey that I created over the past 3 years. But if I was to change anything, that would probably be it. But, I accept sort of every decision I make. And my rule is that if I can't put my head on the pillow at the end of the day and accept what I've done, well, then I've got to make a change. So
Yeah, yeah. No, great advice there. So, what have you actually learned about yourself along your journey in business?
I'm a bit too tough. I'm a bit rough around the edges. Unfortunately, being an estimator has attached a certain personality to me, which doesn't necessarily mix in business. Am I a good business owner? Maybe, maybe not. Am I a good delivery of message? Sometimes, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But, what's important that I've learned about me is obviously that I'm never going to stop. That's just my values that have been installed into me.
Yep.
But yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing that, Rick. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that as business owners, we always have you know, an element of doubt. Are we doing the right thing? Are we being true to our values? All of those things cross our mind from time to time. So, you're not alone in that respect.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of businesses talk about it. I think a lot of people sort of shelter that in. I wish there was a community where it was a safe place in a free space to be able to share that. There's a lot of
Yes.
communities where I see where you have to pay memberships to be part of that circle to be able to share those experiences. It'd be great to see some more free events, I suppose, for people who are business owners to be able to do that. I know there's events you can go to and all that sort of stuff. But, some people, operate in a digital space like I operate in a digital space and yeah,
Mm.
just different structure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, what words of wisdom would you pass on for anyone that is considering going into business for themselves?
Just do it. Just do it. You don't have to, have the best product, build it first and make it great later. I think there's a meme going around about SpaceX or some sort of rocket ship, I think it was, and it showed this bloody rocket ship that just had ugly boosters on it. And the caption is just build it. And then there's a picture below where these boosters of the rocket is polished, refined, perfect. People think that day one in business has to be perfect. So no, it doesn't. As long as you maybe.
Really, really good advice, and certainly something that my coach taught me is because I was always one for dotting the i's and crossing the t's and
We all
making
are.
sure things were perfect. And he said, "Phil, stop it. Just get started." And what I've come to realize is that nothing happens until you've got some momentum happening. So great advice. Great advice. Just get started. Okay. What does the future look like for you? And how do you see or what do you see as being the main challenges for your industry going forward?
Well, I think my challenge is the same as everyone's challenge at the moment who's in an admin, B2B basis is AI. I think that's the massive challenge everyone's facing.
Hmm.
You know, I think everyone faces a challenge moving forward in the future with staff. I think I've never wanted to say this and I always hated when people told me this, but they weren't built like they were back in my day. Sort of focus and mentality. I do think there's definitely a shift in change of attitude of staff. But what I do know is that one of the good things that is going to happen is there's going to be opportunities in the future. So
Mm.
I feel like I'm a product of a failure in school, but I created my own opportunity, and it's never been a better time to start a business or expand on that idea. So
Yes.
opportunities will arise. I think the struggles will be, trying to make things work. But one of the cool things about business moving forward, I think, is we've got resources all around the world now that are accessible, which is,
Mm,
it's a good thing, bad thing also as well, but it's quite scary as well. Like I do feel for just talking on resources. I do feel for Australian, general public who potentially may lose their jobs due to replacements of AI or, developments, enhancements of software or resources
mm.
that are available offshore. It does sort of hurt me a little bit because I remember myself when I was turned down jobs because of, other bits and pieces and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's something, we have to learn to live in the world of AI. AI is not going to replace everything. It's just, as individuals and as humans, we need to pivot because AI will always need some human input. And I guess the trick is to pivot into something and learn how to not only accept AI, but also how to use it properly.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, Rick, in terms of challenges for yourself, where do you see your own personal challenges at this?
I've got 2 kids and obviously married still. My challenge is keeping that together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that business is always going to be there for me. I think I know how to, glue the parts together if something breaks. But my challenge is, we've got a 1-year-old. He's gonna, sort of shake the apple cart, if you want to call it like that. And I got a 6-year-old who, has his own challenges as well. And you know, growing as a family is probably a challenge. So family is obviously number one important. But when it comes down to business, adapt, evolve, and grow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, but what is going to happen is tomorrow. So,
Mm,
you know, we can dwell on the bad things that happen, but tomorrow, my family, I hope, are still there. They are going to be there. My business is going to be there, and tomorrow's a new day to, be better every single day. So yeah.
yeah. So balancing that business and family time is really important.
Yeah. I
Yeah, fantastic, Rick.
think if
So,
you're,
Rick,
yeah.
where can people find you? How do people find you?
Main goal is word of mouth. I'd love people to reshare, my journey and reshare my product and reshare basically experiences. And that's just an organic sort of route. Our website, estimatingonline.co is our main website. You can find us on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Estimating Online. And, I really think that we're going to shake up things in the next 6 to 12 months, given the opportunity. So, you might see us around.
Rick, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I look forward to following you on that journey into the future and celebrating the wins that you have along the way. If you're a business owner with a business story that resonates with this podcast and you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us. I'm Phil Badura, turning business dreams into reality. See you on the next episode.
Thanks, Phil.